Hey everybody, we are going to construct today this pattern from the Sultan Barsbay funerary complex in Cairo that has some beautiful 16-fold rosettes as well as 8-fold rosettes. And we're going to look at how to analyze it and construct it. And we're going to construct it at a 45-degree angle to what you see here, so that our 8-fold rosettes are in the corners and our 16-fold rosettes are in the center, just so that we can easily construct it in this repeat square. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this square, but then we're going to focus right here on this minimal triangle. So if we can construct this triangle of pattern, then we can construct the rest of this thing. Okay, so we are using GeoGebra. Right now I have certain settings set up, so I'm going to restore my default settings, and I'm going to show you what sorts of things I like to have in my setup. So I like to right click in here and hide the grid, and then I like to go into my preferences. So if you don't see those, you can right click and go to graphics preferences. And I'm going to go to my default preferences, and I want my lines to default to 100% opaque, my segments 100% opaque, thickness 2, my conics thickness 2, 100% opaque, and my points I'm going to make size 3. And I'm not that picky about color, although I do like my lines to be gray. So that's default preferences, color, and style. And you can set obviously much more, but we're only going to be using points, lines, and segments. So that's fine. All the other preferences we set will be under object preferences, but we don't have anything yet to construct. Then over here, I like to sort by object type, which that doesn't have any meaning just yet. And I like to have my auxiliary objects showing. So I think that has them showing, but we'll see as we construct things. So I'm going to start by going to my input bar. If you don't see that, it's under View, Input Bar. So this is GeoGebra Classic 5. If yours looks different, you might be using GeoGebra 6 or the web version. I'm using GeoGebra Classic 5. So I'm going to go to my input bar, and I'm going to type capital A equals open parentheses 0, 0, close parentheses. And that creates a point A at 0, 0. And then I want to create a point capital B at 1, 0. And what this does is it creates 2 points that are horizontal from each other. And I'm going to use, under this triangle, which is my polygon tool, I want the regular polygon tool. And I'm going to first click on A and then click on B and tell it that I want 4 vertices. That's the default. And that creates a regular fourgon, so a square. After I use one of my tools, I always want to go back to this arrow move tool so that I don't accidentally create any objects that we don't want to be there. I'm going to use my scroll wheel to zoom in. If you don't have a scroll wheel for some reason, underneath here, you can zoom in and zoom out. So with my arrow tool, I want to select my polygon. I can either click on the inside of it, the square, in the graphics view, or I could select it in my algebra view. And I'm going to go to color, and I want to move my opacity to 0. So what that does is it just makes this to where if I click on the inside of it, I'm not selecting the polygon anymore. And if I select a side, I'm just selecting that line segment. I'm not selecting the whole polygon. So then I want to put in some lines. So I'm going to put in this diagonal from B to D, and I'm going to put in an angle bisector underneath my perpendicular line tool. And I need to click on 3 vertices, A, B, D. So the middle point that you click on is the vertex of the angle that you're bisecting. Then under the point tool, I want to grab the intersect tool. And what I want is to click exactly on this intersection here. As long as the area is not busy, the intersect tool will snap to what you want it to be. Otherwise, you can click on one object and then the other object, and it'll find the intersection of those 2 objects. Then I want the angle bisector of both of these angles, so this one and this one. And I want that intersection as well. Actually, let me show you how it would work if I click on this line and then this line. See, that gives me the intersection that I want. All right, so then I want to bisect this angle. So let me grab my angle bisector tool again. And actually, I didn't need that point F. That's not the point that I need. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, so where this angle bisector intersects this angle bisector, that's the next point that I want. So this triangle ABD, that's that minimal triangle that I was talking about. So we're focusing our efforts on filling in the pattern on this triangle. We're going to have an 8-fold rosette here, a 16-fold rosette here, and then all those other little shapes in between. So what I want to do is I'm going to construct a perpendicular line from this point to this side, or I could do it from this point to this side. But what I want is a circle that's inscribed in this triangle here. So I'm going to go down, not my perpendicular line tool. I want the, I do want the perpendicular line tool. So I'm clicking on F, and then I'm clicking on this line segment, and that gives me a line that's perpendicular here. And then that's the point over here that I want. I want my circle with center through point tool. So that's the default top one under the circle tool. And I click on the center of the circle and then the point on the circle. And that creates a circle that's tangent to those 2 lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the circle and then this line, and I'm going to click on the circle and then this line. And what that does is it gives me where that circle is tangent to those lines. We always need to define points. We can't just assume that a point is there because GeoGebra doesn't know what to do with that. All right, so then I've got these points, and what I want to do, let me consult my notes just to make sure I'm doing the right thing. Yeah, so this point right here is where the tip of the 8-fold rosette is going to live. So I'm going to draw a circle in there. And that's also where the tips of the little bird's feet dart shapes are. So I've got a little bit of information here. So I have a construction line that goes from here to here that's actually going to be one of my pattern lines. So I'm going to make it blue and thick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect that line over this line. using my reflect outline tool. So I start by clicking on the thing I want to reflect and then what I want to reflect it over. And that gives me this line. So I'm going to define this intersection point here. And I don't need this point up here just yet, but I will want this point. So then I'm going to take this line and reflect it over here. And I do want that intersection point. And I'm going to reflect that line over here. And I want that intersection point. And this gives me my first polygon. So I don't want regular polygon, I want polygon. So I get this kite shape, and that's my first polygon of my pattern. Yay. I can get my second polygon of my pattern by taking that same reflect outline tool and clicking on this vertex, holding down Control and selecting that vertex, and then clicking on this line. And then again with the polygon tool, clicking on the vertices all as cyclically all the way around. So notice this is getting kind of messy. What I'm going to do is right click on the word segment over here and then show label and show label again to hide those labels. And I'm going to do the same thing to hide the labels for my points and hide the labels for my lines and hide the labels for my conics, just to keep my workspace clean. So we're starting to get more information here. I'm going to reflect this line over here. Oh, there's another polygon. If I grab this intersection, I'm gonna right click on it and hide the label. I can put in this polygon, and you can always right click on those segments individually to hide the labels. You don't have to hide the labels. I just like to keep my workspace clean. So then next what we want is I want to reflect this line about here. So that gives me another shape. So I want this intersection and this intersection. Hide those labels. I'm going to draw in my polygon. I'm just going to leave those labels for now. I'm going to grab this intersection. Undo is not always the best. Oh, here's a good, let's save our file. So you can save it whatever you want, wherever you want. I have a folder called GeoGebra Constructions. I'm going to call this Sultan Barsbay Practice. Always a good idea to save your work. We should have done that to begin with. All right, so I'm going to do one more reflection right here. And I'm going to grab this point right here, and I'm going to put in this polygon. Cool, so we're getting there. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to grab this perpendicular line tool, and I want a line perpendicular to this line through Q. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me the centers of some circles that define a couple other things for us. So they're going to hold those bird's feet dart shapes. And notice this circle's tangent to some of those angle bisectors that we put in earlier, but it does poke out of the main construction. So it's not an inscribed circle in that sense, but it is inscribed between those two radial lines. All right. I'm going to put in those two intersections, and I'm going to put in this circle, and this circle is going to hold the 16 pointed star that's part of my rosette. And let's see, what do I need to do next? Right. So what I'm going to do, I've got this point of intersection right here. I'm going to grab my parallel line tool, and I'm going to put a line parallel to this line through this point. And again, because it's a pattern line, I'm going to make it thicker and blue. And I'm going to grab this intersection, and I'm going to grab that intersection as well. I want to reflect this line over this line. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to grab that intersection. And now I have another polygon. So we're getting some places where these two lines intersect the next radials. I want those intersections. Oh, and notice I just reflected this line over this line, and I want that intersection. And that's going to give me this polygon. I'm going to grab my reflection tool, and I want to reflect these two lines over here. And here's another polygon. And then this is where it gets a little weird. I'm going to draw in this shape. And then to get this shape, I want to reflect these 2 points over here. And I want you to notice that this little bird shape is shaped a little bit differently than this bird shape. Traditionally, they would all be the same. And this line would continue straight through that vertex, but this pattern breaks some rules. Sometimes you have to break rules in order to get a pattern to work exactly correctly, and I think that's okay. It's not always the most mathematically elegant solution, and that kind of bothers me a little bit sometimes, but this pattern, it doesn't bother me so bad because I think it is a very beautiful pattern. And I'm just hiding those labels again. All right, so we're pretty much here. I do want to complete this petal. So I'm going to reflect these 2 points over here, and I'm going to draw in that polygon. And I think we're good. So everything else from here, I'm going to put in just a sequence of rotations and reflections. So let's clean this up a little bit. I'm going to show my segment labels again and hide them. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to hide all of those blue construction pattern lines. Don't need those anymore. And yeah, I think we're good. So I'm going to show the label on this point, point B. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bunch of rotations of these polygons about point B. My kitty cat's meowing. She wanted to come be in the video. So how we're going to do this is let's start with this quadrilateral Q4. Hi. Do you want to come see? Ooh. This is Sophie. You want to sit in my lap? Nope. Okay. All right, Q4. So I'm making a 16 fold rosette. So I want 2 pi radians divided by 16, which is pi over 8. So I'm using radians instead of degrees, but it's like 360 degrees divided by 16. So I'm creating a sequence of rotations of polygon Q4 by pi times I over 8 about point B, where I varies from 0 to 15. So I is my index variable, and I'm just saying I'm starting by plugging 0 in for I, then 1, then 2, then 3, all the way up to 15. So I'm doing 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, 3 pi over 8, 4 pi over 8, 5 pi over 8, etc. until I get to 15 pi over 8, because 16 pi over 8 is the same as 0. It's going all the way around again. And I'm going to Control C before I hit enter, and then I'm going to hide Q4 because I'm done with it. Next, I'm going to do the same thing for poly 5, but I'm going to hit Control V, and instead of Q4, I'm going to type poly 5. And now I'm going to hide poly 5. I'm going to do not the same thing for anything else because nothing else is going to get rotated that many times. So the next thing I want to do is I want to take this poly 4 and I only want to rotate it 3 times about point B. So I'm going to use that same code. I'm going to replace it with poly 4, but notice I don't want to go all the way around because of this issue. So I only want to go from 0 to 2, but that goes the wrong direction. So I need to make it negative pi over 8 from 0 to 2. Then I'm going to hit enter. And what was that? That was poly 4. So I'm going to hide poly 4. Then I'm going to take this list L3 and I'm going to rotate it 4 times around my circle. So 2 pi divided by 4 is pi over 2. So I'm going to type sequence rotate, not poly, L3 by pi I over 2 about B, where I goes from 0 to 3. And I'm going to use this same code for everything else. So I'm going to hide L3. I'm going to do the same thing for poly 6. I'm going to hide poly 6. I'm going to do the same thing for Q5. I'm going to hide Q5. I'm going to do the same thing for Q3. And then I'm going to hide Q3. I'm going to do the same thing for poly 3. And then I'm going to hide poly 3. I'm going to do the same thing for Q2. And then I'm going to hide Q2. I'm going to do the same thing for poly 7. And then I'm going to hide poly 7. I'm going to do something a little bit different for Q1, but let's go ahead and do poly 2. And then hide poly 2. For Q1, I'm going to make a sequence of 2 of them right here. So about point D. So I'm going to write sequence, rotate, poly, no, what was it? Q1 by pi I over 4 about D, where I goes from 0 to 1. Pi. There we go. I think I typed it right this time. And we'll just capitalize that. So let me hide Q1. And then I want to do that same thing for this list L11. And I'm going to hide L11. So notice I still have some empty spaces up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fill those with reflections. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the rest of my lines. And I'm going to hide my conics. And I'm going to hide my points. Notice I'm keeping poly 1 for now. So I want to reflect this, this, and this over here. And I want to reflect this over here. And we've got our pattern. So now I'm just going to hide poly 1. And then we can play around with color however we want. So we can play around with color and opacity. I want those to be the same colors. I don't know, maybe those are blue. Maybe these guys are purple. Maybe these guys are pink again. Maybe these guys are orange again. I don't know. But yeah, play around, have fun, and show me what you can do with this thing. Thanks.